Okay, let's unpack this. We live in a digital world, right? Constantly creating, saving, sharing all sorts of stuff. From those epic vacation photos to the programs that power your work, where does all that information actually go? It often feels a bit like magic, doesn't it?
It certainly can feel that way, but behind that magic is a truly fascinating landscape of technology. Today, we're taking a deep dive into something absolutely fundamental, yet surprisingly overlooked: secondary storage. This is really the unsung hero where your digital life truly finds its long-term permanent home.
Exactly. Our mission today isn't just about listing specs. It's more like a journey, yeah?
Right.
Into the hidden heart of your digital world. We'll uncover how every photo, every document, every program you use finds its lasting home, and try to understand the ingenious engineering behind these memory keepers. Get ready to maybe see the tech you interact with every single day in a whole new, more insightful light. So, to kick things off, let's talk about the fundamental need for secondary storage. You're likely already familiar with primary storage, like your computer's RAM. We all know it's fast, but it has a crucial limitation, right?
It absolutely does. What's really key to understand here is that RAM is incredibly fast, yes, but it's volatile. Think of it as your computer's short-term memory, lightning quick for active tasks, for everything you're working on right now. But the moment the power goes, poof, that data is gone. It's why that unsaved document disappears if your computer suddenly crashes or loses power.
Oh, I remember that feeling. The pure panic of a power cut mid-essay back in college, only to restart my computer and find nothing. All my unsaved work just vanished. It really drives home the value of that non-volatile aspect you mentioned. So, what storage devices step in to be the ultimate memory keepers when the power's out, making sure our digital lives persist?
That experience perfectly illustrates the problem secondary storage solves. It's exactly that scenario. This is where the non-volatile storage comes in. It keeps your data safe and sound, even if there's no power flowing. Now, it's not directly accessible by your computer's main processor, the CPU, not like RAM is. Instead, it acts more like a long-term archive, securely holding your operating system, all your programs, every single file, ready for the CPU to pull pieces of information into that faster but temporary RAM only when it's needed.
Okay, so it's about persistent memory, a crucial distinction, and its uses are incredibly diverse, right? It's not just one type of device, it's like a whole ecosystem.
Absolutely. Think about it. It ranges from storing the operating system and all the programs on your internal hard drive to, say, Blu-rays, distributing films right to your living room, or those handy little memory sticks you use for transporting data from one place to another. And magnetic tape or external hard drives are still widely used for crucial backup purposes, especially in businesses, but also for personal data. And then you've got SD cards expanding storage on your camera and smartphone. That's all secondary storage, keeping your music, video, photos safe. It's truly the backbone of digital permanence, whether it's inside your computer or an external device you carry around.
That's a huge range of applications, yeah, touching almost every digital interaction we have. But with so many different devices out there, I mean, from tiny flash drives to massive server farms, it can feel like there are a million different ways to store data. Is there a way to simplify this? Are there sort of core fundamental principles that unite all these seemingly different approaches?
That's a really critical question because you're right. It looks like a very complex landscape on the surface. But at its heart, we can pretty much categorize secondary storage methods into three core technologies. These fundamental principles dictate how data is actually stored and retrieved, at a physical level.
Okay, so these are like the foundational building blocks. What are these three core technologies that everything else is built upon?
Precisely. We have magnetic storage, optical storage, and solid-state storage. Each one employs a unique physical principle to record and retain data, whether it's manipulating magnetic fields using focused light or trapping electrons.
That core principle really simplifies how we think about it. So, connecting this to the bigger picture, you're saying that whether it's a giant server farm full of data or that tiny little card in your phone, it's basically one of these three methods at its core. That's a powerful way to understand the underlying tech. Essentially, yes. It's quite remarkable, actually, how these three approaches have dominated the landscape for decades. Even as their implementations have become, more refined and powerful over time, each has carved out its own niche based on its inherent strengths and limitations. We can delve into what makes each one distinct and how they've evolved.
Okay, let's start with magnetic then. When I think of magnetic storage, I immediately picture a hard drive, that classic spinning disk. It feels like a very physical process. How do these things actually work at a detailed level to keep our files safe? What's truly ingenious here is the the intricate mechanical dance involved. Imagine a very precise record player, but instead of music, it's reading and writing your digital files. Tiny magnetic disk heads fly, just micrometers above a rapidly spinning platter. We're talking thousands of RPMs, and these heads make incredibly subtle magnetic changes on the surface to store your data as sequences of zeros and ones. It's a marvel of mechanical engineering, really. Precisely aligning a tiny head to find and change microscopic magnetic bits on a surface moving incredibly fast. This fixed magnetic hard disk with its solid platter is quite different from the older, more flexible floppy disks you might remember.
It sounds incredibly precise. Wow, I can only imagine the engineering involved to achieve that reliably in a consumer device. So what are the key physical components making this magnetic dance happen? What's inside the box?
Right, you've basically got four main components working together in concert. There's the magnetic platter itself, the actual surface that holds the data. Usually there are multiple platters stacked. Then there's a drive spindle that rotates those platters at thousands of revolutions per minute very consistently. Then you have the drive read-write head, which is the tiny component that actually magnetizes areas to write data or detects magnetic changes to read it. And finally, there's an actuator arm that moves that read-write head back and forth across the platter with incredible precision to find the right spot. These fixed magnetic hard disks are still very widely used in many PCs and laptops, often forming the backbone of their internal storage.
Okay, so where do these magnetic drives really shine? And what are their biggest trade-offs compared to the other types we'll discuss?
The biggest advantages are, hands down, massive storage capacities and an unbeatable cost per gigabyte. They can store huge amounts, up to 12 terabytes or even more these days, making them ideal for vast quantities of data. Think video libraries, backups, server data. And what's fascinating is that despite being a mechanical kind of older technology, magnetic drives still form the invisible backbone of the cloud and enterprise data centers globally. It shows that sometimes sheer scale and affordability trump cutting-edge speed for certain foundational tasks.
Right.
However, those mechanical parts are their Achilles heel. Durability can be an issue if you drop them. They're also sealed units because the internal environment has to be incredibly clean due to the precision required. And they're not really very portable for everyday carrying, the internal ones anyway, though portable versions do exist, usually in an external case, for backup or data transport, connecting easily via USB.
So if you're building a massive media server at home for, I don't know, a decade's worth of 4K video, or setting up a desktop computer where you just need huge storage on a budget, this is still your go-to. It's the workhorse for bulk data.
Exactly. The workhorse is a good way to put it.
So we've explored the spinning platters and the magnetic dance, but what if you wanted to store data using something completely different like light? That's where optical storage comes in, right? The technology behind those familiar CDs, DVDs, and Blu-rays. How does light actually store information that our devices can then read? It seems counterintuitive.
Well, it's a truly clever method, actually, relying on precise lasers. Data is stored as microscopic pits and lands. These are essentially tiny indentations and flat surfaces on the disk. They're either burnt in with the laser for recordable disks or pressed during manufacturing for mass-produced ones, like movie DVDs. These pits and lands follow a very long spiral track that circulates outwards from the disk's center. When the disk is read, a laser beam passes over these pits and lands. The level of reflected light is measured. A pit might scatter the light differently or less intensely than a flat land which reflects it strongly. And that difference in reflection creates the signal that the device deciphers as the zeros and ones of digital data.
Ah, okay, that makes perfect sense. But I've always wondered this. CDs, DVDs, and Blu-rays are all physically the same size, roughly, yet they hold vastly different amounts of data. A CD is tiny compared to a Blu-ray in terms of capacity. How does that work if they're all just pits and lands on a spiral?
Yeah, that's a great question. It brings us to a crucial point about precision and the properties of light itself. The key difference is the wavelength of the laser used to create and read those pits and lands. A CD uses red light. Red light has a relatively larger wavelength. This means it can only reliably create and read relatively bigger pits and lands on the disk surface. You need features large enough for the light wave to interact with properly.
Okay, red light, bigger wavelengths, bigger pits. Got it.
Exactly. Now, Blu-ray discs, however, utilize a blue-violet laser. This laser has a much shorter wavelength, and because the wavelength is shorter, it allows for significantly smaller pits and lands to be recorded and read accurately. The smaller those features are, the more data you can pack onto the same physical surface area of the disk. It's all about density.
So Blu-rays fit more because their bits are literally smaller. That's a fantastic example of how innovation in one area, like laser technology, directly changes storage capabilities. This miniaturization, powered by laser innovation, it shows a universal truth in tech, doesn't it? Pushing the boundaries of precision, whether with light or magnetism, is how we unlock new frontiers. So, what are the general pros and cons of optical storage for us today?
Well, their advantages include being incredibly cheap to produce in bulk, which is why they were great for mass distribution. They're also very easily portable as disks, and they take up very little physical space when stored. They were excellent, and still are in some cases, for distributing media like songs and videos and software too. And they're also quite good for archiving data because the media itself can last a long time if stored properly. Capacities range, as you know. A CD-ROM holds up to about 720 megabytes. A dual-layered DVD gets you up to maybe 8.4 gigabytes. And a dual-layered Blu-ray can hold up to 50 gigabytes. So decent but not huge by today's standards.
Right, 50 gigs is okay, but not compared to multi-terabyte hard drives.
Exactly. And optical storage, while important historically, its evolution laid critical groundwork for understanding how to pack information onto physical surfaces at microscopic scales. That's a challenge still faced by even the newest technologies.
Okay, but what makes them less ideal for, say, your computer's main drive? What's the flip side?
Well, first, they offer less storage capacity overall compared to magnetic or solid-state types, especially for the large files and operating systems we use now. They are also easily damaged or scratched, which can make the data completely unreadable. We've all had that happen. And they require a dedicated optical drive, a reader, to access the data, which many modern laptops don't even include anymore. And critically, they have relatively slow write speeds. Burning a full DVD or Blu-ray can take quite a while, which isn't ideal for constantly saving and modifying files like you do on a main drive.
Yeah, definitely. So while great for maybe distributing films or music albums, or for long-term backups you don't need to access often, probably not your first choice for your operating system or for actively working on large, frequently modified projects.
Precisely. Different tools for different jobs.
So we've covered the mechanical workhorses and the laser-etched media, but what about the technology that's quietly revolutionized our everyday devices? I'm talking about the silent, lightning-fast world of solid-state storage. If you've ever impatiently waited for an old laptop to boot up or watched your phone download an app in seconds, you've already felt its impact. What makes SSDs and flash memory so fundamentally different?
The core difference, the absolute game changer, is the complete absence of moving parts. Unlike magnetic disks that have to spin, or optical disks that need a laser mechanism to move, solid-state disks use non-volatile flash memory to store information purely electronically. This means they don't have to wait for a disk to spin to the correct location or for an arm to physically move across a surface.
Yeah.
This lack of physical delay results in incredibly fast read and write speeds. It's a completely electronic process from start to finish.
No moving parts, so no mechanical failures like a head crash, and no noise either. That alone is a huge advantage. But how does that flash memory actually hold on to data without any physical movement? It still feels a bit like magic, honestly.
It's quite clever, really. Instead of moving parts, solid-state memory uses electrical charges to literally trap electrons within tiny memory cells, often called floating gates. A relatively large electric current is used to essentially force these electrons through an insulating barrier and hold them on the other side. They remain there, effectively stuck, even when the power is off, until they're flashed with a new current to either clear them out or retrap them, which is where the name flash memory comes from. Whether those electrons are trapped, which might represent a 0, or not trapped, representing a 1 in a particular cell, is then interpreted by the device controller as your binary data. It's a completely electronic silent process, which is a big part of why it's so fast.
Wow. That's a fascinating way to think about digital information using trapped electrons as bits. So cool. What are the big practical advantages of this technology for everyday users? How does it make our lives better?
Oh, the advantages are significant, and they really touch almost every aspect of device performance. First, they are highly durable, precisely because there are no moving parts to break if you drop your laptop or phone. They boast very, very fast read and write speeds, which translates directly to quicker application loading, faster file transfers, and generally a much snappier system feel. You also get no noisy fans specifically for the drive, and no whirring or clicking drive arm, making for quieter devices. And perhaps most noticeably for many people, they allow for much, much faster startup times for devices like laptops and smartphones. Booting up in seconds is common now.
Yeah, that boot time difference is huge.
Definitely. And you find these SSDs in higher-end computers, pretty much all modern laptops, all smartphones and tablets. Flash memory, more generally, like in USB memory sticks or SD cards, also benefits from being incredibly portable and very durable, making it just ideal for cameras and mobile phones where ruggedness and small size are really key.
So if your phone feels quick or your laptop boots up in seconds instead of minutes, you probably have this solid-state tech to thank. But what's the catch? There's usually a trade-off, right? What's the downside here?
The main disadvantage, historically and still somewhat true, is that they are generally more expensive than traditional magnetic hard disks, especially when you compare the raw cost per gigabyte. While their storage capacity can be similar in range to magnetic drives these days,
Mm-hmm.
from around 100 gigabytes all the way up to 16 terabytes for high-end SSDs that cost per gigabyte is still typically higher.
Okay.
However, that price difference is continually shrinking as the technology matures and manufacturing scales up. SSDs are becoming much more accessible for everyone, which is great.
Right. Understanding how these technologies work is one thing, but the real power comes from knowing how to apply that knowledge, yeah? So if you're standing in an electronics store or maybe planning your next big data backup strategy, how do you actually choose the right storage for your specific needs? What are the key criteria to weigh up?
That really brings us to a crucial point,
Yeah.
because as we've seen, there's no single best storage solution for everything. It's all about the right fit. To make an informed decision, you really need to evaluate several key characteristics of the storage device or medium. We're talking about capacity, speed, portability, durability, reliability, and of course cost. Each of these plays a vital role in determining whether a particular type of storage is suitable for a particular application.
Okay, so capacity is pretty straightforward. Just how much data it can hold, like, what, 700 megabytes for a CD or maybe 12 terabytes for a big hard drive. What about the others? How do we define those to make a practical choice between, say, an SSD and an HDD?
Exactly. So speed refers to the rate at which data can be read from or written to the device. It's usually measured in megabytes per second, MABs or gigabytes per second, GBs now. This impacts how quickly your files load or save. Portability is simply how easy it is to physically carry the device. Is it small and light like a USB stick or bulky like an internal hard drive? Does it need external power? Durability considers how resistant the device is to physical shock, like being dropped. Also, how well does it handle things like extreme temperatures or strong magnetic fields? SSDs win big here. Reliability asks how likely the device is to fail or how likely data is to be lost or corrupted over time. This is super critical for backups, obviously. Different technologies have different failure modes and lifespans, and cost naturally is the upfront price of the device itself, but also, importantly, the cost per megabyte or gigabyte of storage. That helps you compare the actual value for money across different types and capacities.
That gives us a really clear framework. Okay, let's try an example to see how it works. Let's say I have, I don't know, 5,000 vacation photos, and each photo is maybe about 10 megabytes on average. So quick math, that's 50,000 megabytes or 50 gigabytes of storage needed. Which storage devices would be suitable for that amount of data based on what we've discussed, and what trade-offs might I consider?
Okay, 50 gigabytes, that's a good test case.
Yeah.
You have a few solid options across the different technologies we talked about.
Yeah.
You could just fit that onto a dual-layer Blu-ray disc as they hold up to 50 gigabytes. That would be very cheap media, good for archiving, but maybe not super convenient to access frequently.
Right, need a Blu-ray drive too.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Or you can easily use a smaller capacity HDD. Even the smallest ones these days are usually 500 gigabytes or 1 terabyte. That would accommodate your 50 gigabytes easily, offering tons of extra space for future photos at a very low cost per gigabyte.
Right.
But it would be slower access than an SSD. And an SSD, even an entry-level one, like 128 GB or 256 GBP, would work perfectly. It would provide very fast access to your photos, which is great if you plan to browse or edit them frequently. It would be more expensive up front than the HDD space, though.
Makes sense. What about optical?
Well, optical storage, like a standard CD or even most single or dual-layer DVDs, simply wouldn't have enough capacity for 50 gigabytes. They top out much lower.
Right.
Now, if you wanted to store this on your smartphone for easy access, you'd likely look at an SD card if your phone supports expandable storage, maybe a 64 GB or 128 GB card. Or you just rely on the phone's internal flash memory, prioritizing portability and immediate access over, say, the low cost of an HDD. So as you can see, it really all comes down to balancing those characteristics, capacity needed, speed required, how portable it needs to be, durability, reliability concerns, and your budget for your specific need and how you plan to actually use that data.
And that wraps up our deep dive into the world of secondary storage. It's been quite a journey. We've gone from the intricate mechanical dance of magnetic disks through the laser light shows of optical media and landed in the lightning-fast, silent world of solid-state ships.
What's truly fascinating here, I think, is not just how these diverse technologies work individually, but how they've evolved and continue to work together in concert to hold the absolutely vast sea of digital information that really defines our modern lives. And understanding these differences isn't just, academic computer science stuff. It empowers you to make smarter, more informed choices about how you store and protect your own digital world, your photos, your work, your memories.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? Well, next time you hit save on a document or snap a photo on your phone, maybe take a second to consider the invisible dance of technology happening behind the scenes to preserve your digital life. What everyday items do you rely on that use these different storage methods? Think about your computer, your phone, your camera, maybe even your game console or smart TV. And how would your experience, your digital life, change if one of them, say, cheap magnetic storage or super fast solid state suddenly vanished from the tech landscape tomorrow? That's maybe something to mull over as you navigate your digital universe.